Thank you, and first of all, huge congratulations to Hiran and the team for successfully launching the Tip Magazine's 7th volume. And with that happiness, we'll move on to the conversation on creating low-impact tourist experience for the eco-conscious travelers. So I'm extremely happy and proud to be able to conduct this session with some of the leading front runners in Sri Lanka tourism arena. So with that happiness, let me brief you on what's going to happen in next 1.5 hours. I guess we have 1.5 hours. Hiran? Okay. So we were given a concept paper by the organizing committee with the title that I just mentioned, and from there I picked 3 key themes to take this discussion forward. One is what is low impact tourism, and how these businesses practice it in their own context. And then who is this eco-conscious traveler, and what they are looking for in travel and tourism with regard to their own experiences. And finally, we are trying to this pooling of knowledge, trying to connect it to the national interest of Sri Lanka tourism. So that is what we are going to do. So I'm trying my best to give equal opportunities to all panelists. So with that, we'll move on to the first question, that is low impact tourism. I would like to talk to our neighbor first, Mr. Anuruddha, who is originally from Balangoda, and he started his entrepreneurial journey in Belihulloya. So I just remember or read somewhere that you won one important award in 2009. You were one of the 10 young outstanding personalities in Sri Lanka in the category of environmental leadership. And you have pioneered eco-adventure in Sri Lanka. And many others that you can explain, of course. With your long-spanning experience in, I guess, a bit of hardcore ecotourism, how do you see this low-impact tourism in your context?
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Okay. Going back to the inception, I mean, what matters to you is that, okay, rather than talking about the, of course, negatives are important, but what is important is to get the learnings, what it is, and how to navigate the challenges, and then basically how to think as, it could be as academics, or it could be as entrepreneurs, it could be different, but yet what matters is the learning. Well, the time, I mean, the biggest challenge somebody would have is when something to be, when someone wants to be a pioneer, is that there is no blueprint. There's nothing that you can refer to. There is nothing you can. There is no one whom you can ask. There may not be guidelines. There may not be any prototypes. So you need to find your own way. You need to use your imagination. You need to be guided by your passion and the grit. So I guess more than the, I mean, most of you can have passion, but if you don't have the grit, so you can have dhairya, but if it is not atpratihata, or if it is not the grit, you go halfway and you give up. And so whether it is sustainability or whether it is any other aspect of tourism, sustainable tourism, of course, every aspect of tourism need to be sustainable. There's nothing called non-sustainable tourism. Every tourism niche or every aspect has to be sustainable. But what we try to do in our line of work is that we create experiences, we create accommodations, in terms of inbound also we play a role, not in a big way, but in a smaller way. But still, we want to create journeys where there is low impact, and at the same time, where we create unique experiences. So the answer, answer is that the journey is challenging, and if you want to basically. But of course, it's achievable. But at the same time, if you want to create something new, if you want to create something unique, you shouldn't be afraid to design or come up with your own terms, come up with your own plans and designs or imaginations to take it forward. And you need to have the passion, you need to have the grit. So that's the message I want to start with.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to your passion and commitment and of course experience creation after a while. But before that, I would like to talk to Mr. Maxim from Connaissance de Ceylon. One thing I noticed on your web is that your task is to offer Sri Lankanized local experiences or regional experience. That word Sri Lankanized, I read it from your website for the first time. How do you go about that Sri Lankanization? Plus, how do you see the idea of low impact tourism?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think, I think firstly, I think we need to also identify what travelers are coming for nowadays. And I would say from our market segment, which is primarily Europe, people are coming to see the real essence of Sri Lanka, whether it is the culture, the heritage, the cuisine, the nature, and they want to really immerse themselves, and especially with the people of Sri Lanka as well. So I think that is extremely important to firstly know exactly what that is. And I think sometimes we are misguided by thinking, we want to become like another country, we want to be Singapore, we want to be Thailand, but we have so much to offer in Sri Lanka, so that's very much the principle it comes from. And yes, it's important to inspire ourselves from different countries, but it's important to really get that touch. And I think also if you want to link it back to low impact tourism, I think, it's low impact, but it's also important to have a good positive impact. And so a lot of these experiences that we do is we are actually running them with a lot of local stakeholders. And I think in Sri Lanka, we have a good practice that I think most of us are doing, is that a lot of our suppliers are actually coming from the community. So when you look at low impact, of course, we have, doing anything with the environment, a safari, anything has an impact on the environment. But also we need to see how positively we can impact the stakeholders and the communities around us. So it's extremely important that when you are running experiences and when is that we try and work with the communities, the people there, to actually try and do the best we can with them. So I will have a bit of an example also of a few of the experiences we ran for one of our groups or group series that were coming to Sri Lanka. They wanted to do a very localized tuk-tuk experience around the south coast. And I've heard from, I was also just quite fresh, and I heard a lot of, horror stories where it's very hard to work with the communities and all of that. And, you need to make sure that you do that. But actually, sometimes what we have to do is remember to, as not outsiders, but, as companies based in Colombo, is that if we involve those stakeholders there, they will take pride in it and they will run our experience. So when I went to this hotel down south, I was quite scared if we run the experiences, we might have some blowback by the guys whose job is to offer experiences to the beach for the people who come to the beach. But, very easily, we spoke to a few of the tuk-tuk drivers in front of us, in front of the hotel, got them together and had a bit of a training, took them around, did the village tour we wanted to do. And that is, I think, a way also that it takes time, but that was a way that, I thought that a good example that it's important to not just Sri Lankanize, but localize and work as much as possible with the communities to make sure that they get as much positive impacts as possible. And, it takes a lot of time. It's sometimes not possible to do because, you need a certain level of English, you need a certain level of service, but it's definitely something that we can strive for and work together. And I think that's something that I think a lot of us in Sri Lanka are doing, and it's a really positive thing, and it's a good way because you're really working with a lot of different stakeholders. And I think that's the beauty of tourism in Sri Lanka, that there are so many people involved to make sure that a tour to Sri Lanka is a really successful one and that people get that Sri Lankanized touch when they come.
Okay, interesting. So now we have Mr. Nalaka and Mr. Tony left, and I believe that they are mostly into mainstream tourism. And someone may ask how that mass tourism can become sustainable. So we will come to a conclusion about the definitions. But before that, how do you manage with largely mass tourists to lower your impacts?
Thank you, Dr. Sar. So yes, so as one of the larger players, because of the group and the size of the business that we run, sometimes we can be labeled as mass tourism players. And yes, I do agree. I would say about 80% of the business that we handle falls into the standard category, which is basically people coming to see the country. They don't come in search of a product which is sustainable. They just come for the country just to enjoy. So when you deal with people like that, you can't define a product where it's only catering to certain experiences which only is sustainable. You can't, because at the end of the day, they will say, no, I want 2 days in Colombo, I want 2 days in the cultural triangle, I want to do this, that, I want to, they come to enjoy. So,
and it's mostly possible in Sri Lanka because we have diverse set of
yes.
resources.
And if you look at the kind of tourist that comes into Sri Lanka, I believe if you look at, I don't know whether there's any statistics to sort of prove it, in my opinion, correct, always to be corrected, I would say about 70% will come for the standard product. But 30% will come searching for a product like what my friend Anuruddha would offer, or something very unique which is very sustainable. So I think that might be as, I would say, small as 30% or even less. So when the framework is as such that 70 to 80% comes for the standard product, we have to find ways as mass scale operators to be sustainable. Because you can't say no to it. You can't say, sorry, your product we are not selling, you can't. Then lose the plot. So what we do is that we look at the main elements that we get, or that we believe that contributes more towards or that is high in impact, and see how we can make it low. For an example, one of the initiatives that we took 12 years ago, we made sure that we are carbon neutral. So we operate about 600 vehicles. So our 600 vehicles, 100% carbon neutral, and we have been carbon neutral for the last 12 years. Then the question is, how do you neutralize it? We don't have projects in Sri Lanka where we can go and plant trees and offset carbon, because Sri Lanka is like a dot, you can't. So then you have to go for carbon credits. Then carbon credits was a thing 12 years back, but now it is being looked at as greenwashing. It's like looked at as if, what are you all doing? It sort of doesn't go well with the current concepts. So, but having said that, there's a limit that we can go to. If you have to offset it in Sri Lanka, maybe in the future there will be projects, but at the moment we are finding it difficult. We are also looking at the rainforest project, which will come to maybe in the next round, which we are looking at a bigger scale. But what we have done to mitigate that is that we work with one of the largest carbon credit or carbon offsetting companies in the world, where they work with the likes of IBM or Microsoft or all the big boys. So at least they're credible. So whatever that we buy, we know that it goes into some sort of audited way of offsetting carbon. So I suppose there are ways of making the mainstream low impact full, but it's difficult to sort of take away the component that a lot of people will come looking for a low impact. But having said that, the European market is now very much, I would say, educated, and they look at even if you go to a property, they will read through what is their sustainable practices, what is their carbon footprint, right? So much so that they have completely given up on domestic air travel and they use trains. So they are more educated. But Sri Lanka gets, I would say, European segment is a little smaller compared to the Asian segment. And unfortunately, Asian segment have not really caught up to that trend as yet. But I suppose it's that we will have no choice. In the coming years, everyone will have to be a little mindful about the carbon footprint. So that's basically how we look at it. So mainstream has to survive. For mainstream to survive, I suppose as players, we also have to find how the high impactful parameters can be mitigated or negated so that it will become a low impactful parameter. So I suppose that is what we do, Dr. Sarathias.
Thank you. So with that, I would like to turn to the most senior person in the panel with 38 years of experience. And in your career of 38 years, how do you see this low impact idea?
My personal opinion is that sustainable tourism is a concept that embraces the whole of the tourism and travel industry globally. Different stakeholders contribute towards that. And even on a national level, it has to come in. Otherwise, it is not easy to call ourselves a sustainable tourism destination. Admirably, what Anuruddha, Maxine and his team does is something which is extremely important for Sri Lanka. Now, if I am to compare what Nalaka said, we would, as HOT tourism, we would never claim to be a big player. And in that we have the flexibility of adapting certain sustainable practices. Like, for example, we use recyclable bottles instead of plastic, so which helps the environment. We use materials which are sourced out from the local suppliers to be given away as gifts, as souvenirs. We reduce the number of paper that we try to reduce the number of paper that we consume. So these are practices that we adapt. But I totally agree with Nalaka that as a destination management company, there are parameters within which we have to work, and it is not easy to contribute towards this as much as probably a hotelier or somebody else does. I personally feel that Sri Lanka has a great opportunity to become a leading sustainable tourism player in the global market. But the question is, are we going away from it? For example, if we talk about mass tourism may not necessarily be the most sustainable practice, because there you have problems like capacity building. How do you spread your tourism? And in that respect, where are we going? So I think it's a mix, the way I see it, to answer your question. I think there are people who are genuinely interested, hardworking and committed, like these gentlemen here and their companies, towards this concept. But there is a lot of more road to cover before we can really come into what we call low impact tourism in Sri Lanka.
At the mass scale?
At any scale. You see, there's always something like this. There are sometimes, obviously when you do tourism, you do it with one of the P's in tourism initiatives to earn your bottom line for your stakeholders. You don't need to do mass scale tourism to achieve that. I'm talking through personal experience, because there was a time when I had my own company that did tourism, and I stayed away from volume. But my bankers were smiling at the end of the day. So I was quite happy about that, and I had no problems. So mass scale tourism, it all depends on the size of your organization and what it needs to keep you going. So you can stay away from mass scale tourism, and that actually gives the flexibility of adapting sustainable practices better. Now, if I take HOT, the company I represent, our market is primarily European. And as was said, the Europeans are very conscious about sustainable travel. And the sustainable travel equation, it's educative for our local suppliers as well as for the traveler. So if the travelers are wanting a sustainable experience, but the suppliers are not able to give that, then it doesn't meet the goal, and vice versa. So the good thing is with tourists coming from the European side of the world, their awareness of sustainable tourism practices is much higher than probably what comes out from the other parts of the world. So there we have a bit of an edge.
Okay, thank you. So with your point, I guess we can come to a conclusion that low impact tourism is a very broader term that can be applied to all the forms of tourism. So when it comes to low impact, it is not only lowering impact, but also enhancing the positives and adding value and maintaining some ethical and so-and-so guidelines into that. So in terms of enhancing the positives and inducing some impacts, I would like to turn to you to listen about one of the highlights of Sri Lanka tourism in October, opening up Cinnamon Life. So how do you see the positives that you have created with that project? That's the largest capital investment, I guess, in Sri Lanka.
Yes, Dr. Sarath, I think Cinnamon Life is one of a kind. And just to sort of give you the scale and the investment, it's a $1.3 billion investment. So I suppose it's the largest at the moment. And it was in construction for a decade. So 10 years it was being built, but now it's finally out. So I think we need products like Cinnamon Life to uplift the tourism landscape and the face of tourism for the country. Because I think that is where the biggest opportunity is. Because if you look at it in the South Asian region, next to maybe, I would say, the closest would be Singapore, where they had the Marina Bay Sands. But next to Marina Bay Sands, there's nothing like similar to Cinnamon Life in the South Asian region, because it's an integrated property. About almost 3,000 to almost 4,000 people can be housed inside Cinnamon Life. So you don't have places like that. Then at the same time, the casino, the gaming operation will come into play within the next 12 months, which we are not talking about small-time gaming. This is like world-class gaming with Milko, one of the biggest players in Macau and in the Philippines. And they will bring their own brand called Nuwa. So Cinnamon Life has 800 rooms, out of which 687 rooms will be operated by Cinnamon Hotels under the Cinnamon Life brand. Entire product is called City of Dreams Colombo. City of Dreams is the product, the Milko product, which is known. They have City of Dreams Manila, City of Dreams Macau, like that. So City of Dreams will have the Cinnamon Life, 687 rooms, plus another hotel called Nuwa, which is their high-end brand. So a brand like Nuwa coming in the gaming world, Nuwa is known. So there will be a lot of people who will come in only to gamble, only to play. And that will make the tourism percentage or the pie bigger. And that is what we want. And also the fact that when you have a property like that, sometimes people will look at the property and will book the other property for half the price. But still, it builds confidence that Sri Lanka has something like that. So I should go to Sri Lanka. So it becomes like an icon on its own. So I believe it will give, or it will provide a different essence to the whole tourism industry, which we haven't seen as yet. And I think the true potential will only be reached when the gaming and the mall, high-end mall comes in. But the gaming will be a real game changer. So they're expecting when things go well and good, entire Colombo will have business. And
can you explain that how entire Colombo?
So it's like this at the moment. Colombo has been completely left out of most of the itineraries. And that happened long time ago when the war was happening, where Colombo was not a place where they wanted to come, and a lot of things were happening, bombs going on and all that. So they sort of moved away from Colombo. So that happened 10, 15 years ago. But now Colombo is being completely neglected, and we are really trying hard to put Colombo back. But then Negombo came up, right? And now it doesn't help because even the highway to Habarana side, the cultural triangle is also like, 2 hours away in the morning, 2.5 hours. So you don't really have to stay in Colombo. So more and more, there's pressure to bring people back to Colombo. Of course, there will be a segment like the Chinese who would want to do the shopping. Then, of course, I need to mention about the duty free, which opened at the port city, which I'm sure will attract a lot of people because of the different options they have. Then the Indians will come to Colombo because Colombo is a must-have in the itinerary. So they will come. But Europeans, they don't, because they have seen bigger cities, better cities. So for a European to come and see Colombo and see, wow, they would have seen better cities. They have traveled the world. But they have traveled the world, but they wouldn't have seen a cinnamon life there, or a product of, maybe forget the name, product of that nature. So that will be something for them to come and see. Okay, I will experience. At the same time, if you go to, I'm sure that you all have, how Crown operates in Australia. In Crown casinos, you have normal day-to-day people. Just after work, they go and gamble a bit and go. So that becomes a way of life. But I don't want the Sri Lankans to go and gamble. I'm not trying to sort of imply that this is for Sri Lankans. But then again, what I'm trying to get at is people who have that sort of a lifestyle will see this as an opportunity for them to come to Colombo, and now they have at least, and with that you will have the musical, casinos are always surrounded with entertainment, right? Casinos is all about, if you go to the Vegas or Las Vegas and all that, it's about that entertainment business. Sometimes people don't gamble that much. But they have the musical shows, they have the rest of the nightlife. All that comes as a part and parcel of the casino or the gaming. With that, we believe that Colombo will become another highlight. And that is what I think the whole plan was 10 years ago. Bring business. At the moment, Colombo is a dead city after 8 o'clock, maybe on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Maybe we will know the places to go and, have a drink or two. But mostly foreigners don't really go. For them, they don't enjoy that kind of fun. So we need to create that environment where foreigners can have fun. Foreigners can look forward to this. And the fact that 800 rooms is not enough. It's not going to be enough. When you have bigger conferences, when you have 1,000 people coming into Colombo, you will have to have cinnamon life. I'm sure the neighboring hotels like Shangri-La, Taj, ITC, I always felt that the best opportunities for Ramada and the 4 stars, because they are walking distance from the heart, they all will benefit. So it's not going to be a game where only one property will benefit, but I think the whole effect of the new business coming in will have a positive impact on, I think, all that entire area, including the apartments. So the number of apartments which is coming in the heart of the city, Tryson, which is again one of our not hotels, but also the properties, 800 apartments opening up. Cinnamon Life apartments are being now rented. So there's a different level of scale of business or accommodation which will come in, and that needs this kind of a product to fill.
Yeah, of course. So that's how the impact you create spills over the region. Okay, so with that I would like to move on to the idea of eco-conscious travel. So I believe Mr. Anuruddha and Maxim are getting very, very closer to the heart and soul of the culture and the nature. So in your experience creation, how do you lower this impact?
Yeah, I think, so I think like I was saying, there's definitely a lot of things we can do and that we still need to do as well. So I think if you look at a tour in Sri Lanka, there's, first we start with you could start with the holistic thing, which would be the emissions and the carbon. So I mean, that, as I think Nalika explained, there's definitely ways of doing it, but I think now it's even going to another level where people want to use electric vehicles. But, so there's a lot of things that we can do using hybrid vehicles, but there's still a long way to go on that sense. Then I think also, I mean, especially as as DMCs, we have a big role to play as well, because I think the decisions we take, and like as Mr. Tony and Nalaka also mentioned, it's very hard because we also have to kind of change the perception, change the demand, and sometimes, we are, providers of service. It's hard to say no when you're a provider of service, but as DMCs, we do have a lot of power basically to cater and also say no to certain practices, and also empower our suppliers. It could be a Jeep driver, and this is something that I think associations have done in training the Jeep drivers, but there's a lot we can do with our power and our power sending business and working with these suppliers to make them also improve with small steps their sustainability. So you could even just, I think we spoke about, and this is something that we do as well, is reducing the single-use plastics. But then again, the challenge comes when you go to a hotel, for example. Not all hotels have the capacity or even the finances to be able to give glass bottles, or even, so they will probably be using plastic bottles, which is fine. But why not also work with the hotels and give them, push them to be able to put a water filter in the hotel? Because at the end of the day, if we give them a reusable bottle, but there's nowhere for them to fill water, they are just going to use the plastic bottle and fill it. So there are a lot of things that we can do as DMCs, and these are things that we are slowly working with our main partners as well to try and push them and to try and get all of these impacts out. I think in terms of the environment, there's a lot that we can do as well. Unfortunately, I think tourism will always have an impact on the environment, because, if we are visiting, if we are doing the best way to protect the environment is just leave it there and not interact with it at all. But that is not possible. We are a very small country. We are quite highly populated if you look at worldwide statistics. And, we have to grow our economy as well. Tourism is almost one of the highest income earners, and I'm sure in 5 years, our economy will be highly dependent on tourism. So we really have to basically use our natural resources in the best way possible. And to do that, we have to see how we can protect them, but also gather some monetary value out of them with the lowest possible impact. So to do that, I think these are even larger policy questions that come at play. There's so much.
Yeah, that's what I want to question you about. How do you manage yourself in doing that? Maybe your value systems, morals, or maybe your leadership or stuff like that?
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, coming back to that, I think, there's, few things that we do is, it's just trying working as local as possible, getting our suppliers to adapt as much as possible to the best practices that are there. So just, even getting the guys we work with, if they're offering a plastic bottle, to try and change that to a glass bottle, get a water filter, things like that. So these are small steps that will make a larger impact. There are also various other initiatives that we have taken as a company. For example, after the tsunami, we started RAV or REV, which is basically a system to also provide education. So this is part of our profits, which goes, and we have 4 centers around the country where we are providing language and IT education free of charge. And we also are working, because we have a bit of a unique position. We have our hotels as well. So we are working with lots of universities as well to get students out there to actually research and do a lot of data gathering on the environments around our hotel. So I think that is also very important, because when we look at protecting the environment, we also really need to have some sort of facts and figures when we are going to back something up. So that's some of the steps that we have been taking pretty much.
Thank you. So turning to Mr. Anuruddha, as I said earlier, I have seen Nicotine is traveling around here in very rural areas and paddy fields and rivers, crossing all these stuff. So what happens when tourists flow into very rural areas? How do you manage impacts?
Yeah, okay. It has a challenge, I wouldn't say no, and sometimes it could be disruptive. And certain communities may accept it positively, some may not. The same communities who have been accepting tourists positively, due to certain reasons, can change overnight. We have faced that, one of our knuckles locations, we during Corona, that community was very positive. They wanted our camp to be there, but no sooner Corona news came in, they took a complete turnaround. So it's challenging, but I believe if you are to be truly sustainable and want to give benefit to the communities that you are working with, though it is challenging, you need to take that move. It's easy to navigate in the familiar waters where everything is very set. All the permissions are there. You have guidelines what to do. You have communities who are geared to do certain services, and hotels, infrastructure, everything is there. You just go and operate the same thing. So it's easy. But when you go into the rural areas, when you go into areas where you have never been before, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to face with the communities, to work with the communities. But then you can give an authentic experience to the tourists, and that's what they're looking for. At the same time, we can expose the communities to a different, another income stream. It may not be their sole income, but another additional income for them to be happy and elevate their lives. Having said that, I would like to add a little bit more to what you asked from Nalaka, whether mass tourism could be sustainable. I think I have a right to answer that also because I am a service provider for all these three guys. So we operate camps, accommodation, and we have our own inbound operation, which is niche wildlife mostly. And then we work for all of these three guys. Actually, mass tourism could be sustainable because, as I said before, all the businesses, all tourism or non-tourism, everything need to be sustainable. But at the same time, especially when it comes to tourism, there are so many things that they do, and our probably the current traveler demands that their respective DMCs need to do, where we could be sustainable. As far as students are concerned, when you all go to the industry, if you are working for a DMC, if you are working for a hotel, maybe you have to design an itinerary, maybe you have to design an experience, maybe you have to provide certain excursions. And when we do that as an industry, maybe the hotel is big, maybe the DMC is big, but still there are ways. As an example now, when we design our itineraries, we never use turtle hatcheries. So I'm sure now most of the tour operators are now moving away from it. Because good old days, we thought turtle hatcheries are doing good to the turtles. We thought, keeping them in a tank and releasing them to the sea will save them. In reality, it is not. We are killing the hatchlings because they wouldn't have energy to swim into the ocean because they have been circling in the tank for days and days and days. And when they are released, they will happily crawl to the sea, but they will not sustain the energy to swim to the deep sea where they need to be to survive away from the predators. So now, few years back, when I started talking about it, nobody wanted to hear about it. But now, whether big or small, everybody is listening. Everybody is putting away turtle hatcheries from the itineraries. Same thing happened with pinnola. When we started talking about it 15 years back, everybody thought we are talking nonsense. How can I do tourism without pinnola? So pinnola is doing bad to wildlife tourism than good. It is, of course, these kind of attractions need to be there for a country. I'm not saying shut down Pinnoda. But if you're talking about sustainability, and if you're talking about low impact tourism and taking your tourists to Pinnoda, there's something wrong. At the same time, sustainable tourism and stage tourism are two different things. Habarana, there is a lot of stage tourism happening. You get into you go into a gravel road, you suddenly meet a bullock cart with a guy with a jatava, you get into the bullock cart, you are being driven, you go into a lake, you do a trip, you get down, you go to a little village, a house, and then there is a woman and a man, they are trying to cook something, so then the guide says, okay, you can help. So maybe guests might, okay, they may think it is genuine, but, somebody who has some consciousness would understand it is a stage. It is a staging process. But again, most of our tourists would enjoy that. Nobody, very rarely somebody would go and complain that is staging. There are complaints, but not from majority would enjoy that. But then again, if you want to offer some authentic, real rural experience, my question is: are we doing the right thing? Are we doing it the correct way? And the same now. So we have been talking about Pinnola before. We have been talking about turtle hatcheries, all that. But now, there's this another elephant in the room about Candy Pereira, which is a very cultural, very traditional, very beautiful cultural pageant that had been happening for thousands of years, or hundreds of years. And now the whole scenario where we are parading elephants is creating a lot of negativity amongst wildlife enthusiasts, sustainable tourism practitioners who are really believing in conscious travel. So we all eliminated elephant back riding. So now I haven't seen in the recent past nobody, big or small, would offer elephant back riding, which is not ethical, not sustainable, and which is very bad. Nowadays, some FITs would hire an elephant and do that, but other than that, no ethical DMC would offer that. But
that means some positive changes are taking place in all the properties.
But again, so you need to be bold in saying, no, we don't promote Perhar because of these reasons. If you want to go, book a ticket, we will provide the driver, we will book the hotel, you can do it by yourself. But so by saying that, I may be bad as a trader for saying this, but still, this kind of a thing, this, if you want to talk about real impactless tourism, low impact tourism, you need to be bold in taking certain decisions, and you need to be bold in talking about certain things that you really want to do. And adding to what we have been doing to create low impact tourism, I'll bring an example, say about 10 kilometers from here, as the crow flies, Ahas Pokuna, which we have created. Midst of 30, we have about 2,000 hectares of forest, and middle of that we have a private property of 30 acres. And we have from the closest road to the property, you need to walk about 30 to 40 minutes, climbing a hill. We have a marked road where we could have easily made a road, but we decided not to make a road, cutting the trees, bulldozing the whole thing. We didn't want to cut a road. So now the question is, if a guest comes paying, or two people coming to Ahas Pokuna paying $600 to $800 per night, how dare you ask them to get down from your vehicle? We don't have a way of going to the accommodation, you need to walk. So the question was, can you say that? Or could you say that? So we decided, yeah, we could say that. If the product is good, if the product is authentic, if there is value for money, and if the experience is unique, you can say that. So you could balance sustainability, environmental impact, yield when it comes to hospitality, when it comes to tourism. You need to be sustainable in economic source, otherwise you can't run a business. So we thought we could balance that, and then yes, you could balance that. So the guests wouldn't, so far, no one has ever complained saying, this particular accommodation got us to, of course, we helped them to carry their bags and all that, but, the experience, nobody has ever complained about this whole experience or the scenario that they have to walk. So my point here is that it could be balanced, the communities could be balanced, but only thing you need to be creative and thinking in the right angle.
Yeah. I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to talk about your mobile luxury camping. That's a new...
Yeah, so we, Mahura Tented Safari Camps, which we started in 1998, which was the pioneer in this concept. And later on it became world's first carbon neutral tented safari camp, world's first. So we were the only people who could calculate the entire carbon emission per person for the entire operation of 1 night, 2 days. And then we emitted with, of course, as Naga said, there was no way of offsetting it here, so we had to buy ethical carbon credits from Netherlands. It's a little funny. So, but still, that's how the system works. If you need to get accreditation and if you want to get recognized, that's how it has to be done. You will understand it later on. So we got we made ourselves carbon neutral. So the concept is, it's a mobile hotel. So we go into national parks with our trucks, and we create the entire mobile hotel, and we create that experience. We give the safaris, we give the entire meal experiences, all that, and then the following day or after 2 nights, we move out from the national park. We started the operation in national parks, and we operated until 2013, and then it became a little political, and somebody decided that we shouldn't be operating, even though it was very low impact, though it was mobile. They decided that this operation has to be stopped, so we moved out. But still, we do that in places like Kumana, Galloya, Madurai, various places where there is lesser known parks. And then for my sector, we have a option called mobile hotels again. It is like we can go into a place with 70 tents and create an experience where nobody, where there is no hotel in the vicinity.
Okay.
So that's the concept.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. With that, I would like to turn to Mr. Tony, and Mr. Anuruddha was talking about some DMCs give up offering some of the products given the impacts that create on culture or animal or something like that. So over the period of your years, how did you notice this transformation of tourists? Actually, do you get inquiries from tourists as such, like we don't want to consume anything harmful to the environment or culture? And how do you see this transformation of tourists over the period of your career?
Several years ago, I think it was Cooney that took the first step to stop sending clients to Pinnavela. And I totally agree with Anuruddha, with what he said, because what used to be done in the past to promote tourism in Sri Lanka was actually more harmful than good. But certain tour operators with the involvement of or advice of local entrepreneurs like Eco Team and similarly like that, they took that practice. Today, there are many who have moved away from it. So Pinnavela is definitely a example. Stopping elephant riding, elephant back riding has been stopped. We don't do it. As a company, we don't do it. Because the howdah, as they call it, the iron cage, which is placed on the back of the elephant, injures the spine of the elephant. And especially with 8 or 9 people on it. So it's a suffering for the animal. And this is recognized mostly by the tour operators in Europe. They understand this. That's why I said before that in the arena of sustainability, it is easier to find acceptability amongst the European fraternity than amongst other nationalities, basically the Asian nationalities. Having said that, as I said, there is no shortage of, today you see there is a rising number of tourists coming to Sri Lanka. So despite the fact that these practices which are considered harmful to sustainability or environmentally friendly practices have been seized, you can still see the tourists coming in. You can still see the programs which are being run without these elements, which are successful. So definitely there is a possibility that if we do the right thing and communicate it in the right way to the right sources, that it will actually enhance tourism rather than suppressing it. That's to answer your question.
Yeah, I also would like to add a note to that. Now, say there is a guy or a family who has been doing elephant back rides. Now we say, okay, we don't promote, but the question is, okay, in terms of sustainability, are we putting that family out of the business? So what are we going to do about it? So that question has to be asked by the same people who are saying don't do it. So we have to find a solution.
Yeah.
So in our small way, we found a solution for this. So instead of promoting elephant back rides, we created a concept called elephant spa.
Uh-huh.
So this elephant, though we don't promote or though they don't promote elephant back riding, it hasn't stopped. It is there.
Yeah.
So with the elephant spa, what we are doing is we are paying the money to the owner. Say you release the elephant to us. We buy the elephant for the day, and our clients pay for that. So we give her or him a spa for the day. We take him to the water, give him a bath, the entire family gets together, rubbing and feeding the fellow, giving him a good time, and taking pictures, all that. So, somebody can say, okay, that is also wrong, but it is a better version
than the other ways.
than, doing a back ride. And then we go with the elephant, we walk with the elephant to this guy's house, have a good meal, they feed again, he will get fed again, and so the half-a-day program ends. So, if you are saying no to something, so there has to be another
Solution
way,
for that.
another opportunity for the communities to be benefited.
Okay. Thank you. That's interesting. So with that, we'll move on to last segment, that is connecting this all pooling of knowledge to the national tourism interest. Politically speaking, we are at an important juncture in our country. We have a new government, president of course, and the government says it's going to make tourism a priority industry. And economically speaking, we are after East attack and pandemic, and we are in a better position, of course. Touristically, by mid-October, we recorded 1.5 million tourists. In next few months, we can easily reach pre-pandemic level 2008 highest figures if the things remain the same. So in this context, how do you see the future of Sri Lanka tourism in relation to low impact? There I would like to, including your insight, I would like to pay your attention to this duality of volume and value, and the intensity of tourist flow and the controls that you are having. So how do you respond to that? We'll start with the senior person for that.
If I may look at it a little bit differently on the topic of sustainability. The three pillars of sustainability is environment, social, and economical impacts. As a destination management company, if I may talk of specifically of that, how do we contribute towards that, and how does that help to take Sri Lanka tourism forward? Now, if you take a simple thing, we invest, and as even workers, we invest into staff training, staff, sustenance in the industry. We have done, the company has done CSR projects towards villages in which the communities that they have done it. All this has been achievable through the earnings from tourism. So that itself is a factor where sustainability in tourism meets one or more than one of the three main criteria of sustainability. So as a company, the company I represent, HOT Travels, Tourism, they are into the sustainability practices even now. Although it may not be sung about too much, it is there. And I'm sure it's the same with most of the DMCs here as well. Going forward, I think Sri Lanka tourism has to, as you said, we are at a very critical juncture. What do we want? Do we want volume? Do we want value? Because sometimes you can't have both. You have to sacrifice one for the other. So that will vary from segment to segment, from entity to entity. How does the national policy go forward, and how do the stakeholders adapt to that policy? And as Sri Lanka is a country with a diversity of facets that can be offered to the world, I personally find it very difficult if somebody asks me, how do you position Sri Lanka on the global tourism map? I honestly don't know, because it will be like, it's like a box. If I have a box in front of me, you see one side of the box, I see the other side of the box. They see the two sides, but it's one box.
Yeah.
Right? So it all depends on how you respond to the side that you see and take the best of what is there, keeping in mind the parameters of low impact tourism, avoid harmful practices, and try to take it forward in a sustainable manner. And yes, tourism from Europe will be and will continue to be a generating factor for Sri Lanka, hopefully. And they are more conscious about sustainability. So I guess it's a bit of a yin and yang situation. The balancing between, I wouldn't call it quality, my apologies, balancing between the Western mindset and the non-Western mindset to build a hybrid that Sri Lanka can benefit from without saying no to either side.
Thank you. That's interesting. So, what you finally mentioned was Sri Lankanization experience, like having this hybrid thing, yin and yang. And so how do you respond to that question? I mean, how do you see the way forward for Sri Lanka tourism with your idea of Sri Lankanization?
Yeah, I think every place has a capacity, and I think that's something that, they'll have to really understand, because if we are to give an authentic experience, like Mr. Anuruddha said about what's happening about a stage experience, you can only give an authentic experience to X number of people. Like, let's say a certain number. If there's 300 people trying to do that in a day, it'll have to be staged. So I think we also have to really understand, in terms of a destination, where in terms of numbers, where is the comfortable place for us to be? And also, I think, so we have lots of issues when it comes to that. I think in Sri Lanka, we don't necessarily look into it into a holistic picture. So if you take countries like Costa Rica, it's very, very, very regulated in terms of the number of rooms you can create, in terms of the number of how you create your accommodations and all of that, especially in very sensitive areas. So we have, the benefit of having some really amazing safari and natural resources in our country. But, the thing is, we also have to, I think, at one day as a collective, take those tough decisions and say, okay, we have come to that capacity now. But that is not an easy decision, because, for example, we think about Yala and the number of jeeps that are in Yala, but I don't know the exact number, but I believe it's close to around 1,000 or something, a little less than that in terms of jeep drivers in Yala. So the day we say maybe 100 jeeps in Yala, it's how do we manage that, right? So we also have to think about, sometimes people, and that is sometimes the juxtapositions that we have, and sustainability is also about communities, their upliftment, and these are people that are making a living off that national park. So I think it's really important to look at that, but then also really important to see how we can spread the tourism in Sri Lanka. I think, as Nalaka said, we often, especially I would say the people in power, love the number of tourists to Sri Lanka. That's what always put out. I believe there was a statement about going to around 4 million tourists in, I can't remember how long. So we also need to see, and we need to treat each area in Sri Lanka a bit differently. Look into how, for example, if Yala is always full, we should look at all the other parks. We have 23 national parks around Sri Lanka. I know Ms. Anuruddha is doing a lot of work in a lot of the parks. We also, saw a lot of demand with our new property in Galloya, is because we also have to, we are also part of the problem. Going to a place, making it popular, will bring more people in. So it's that crossroads, and unfortunately, those are the tough decisions that we have to take. We also have to make sure that we, promote certain different experiences. And I think, there are things, and I think a lot of things that we always see is the picture of the leopard for Sri Lanka. You keep showing that picture of the leopard, then everyone wants to go and see a leopard. So that's the type of thing. So if we get 4 million tourists and 4 million of them want to go and see a leopard, we are probably in a bit of trouble. So it's very important of finding that right balance. And I think, we have to really figure it out. It's unfortunately not decisions that we can make, because at the end of the day, we can't tell someone else, you don't operate here, and while you're doing the same, right? So it's, I think, questions we have to take, but also what we can do is push people to go to different places, go against mass tourism, and that's what more and more people looking for now. They want, that beauty of the experience, and also, the juxtaposition. The more you push for numbers, the less the high-end tourists will come. Because, in other places in Africa, you have private game reserves, you can do private safaris. In Sri Lanka, which is quite equal, whether you're staying at the most expensive hotel or whether you're staying at a guest house, you're still buying the ticket and staying in line to do the same experience. So, we have to really figure that out. It's something, it's just, thoughts, and it's very hard to give a real right answer on that, but it's the type of thinking that I think we have to really think about as an industry, and hopefully our policymakers also. I don't think they'll be very popular if they make those decisions, but, it's things that ultimately have to happen. And, I think we also, that's why we are really, thankful for this type of forum also, because there's a lot of knowledge sharing that has to go out. I think, when it comes to especially elephants, turtles, all these activities we do with tourists. I think another thing that's quite popular, I don't know if you all have, but we've had a lot of clients who have seen swimming with whales. And a lot of people requesting it to us. We just categorically tell them no, but I know that certain of my clients, when they have been at the beach, they have been, told, let's go and swim with whales. And these are also other very impactful things. And, at the end of the day, I believe even turtle hatcheries are technically illegal in Sri Lanka. But, we have to see what, we have to somehow, get policymakers and people to take action. It won't be popular, but these are things that we have to do not for the next 5 years. It might be detrimental in the next 5 years, but in the next 15, 20 years, we'll see the positive impacts.
Yeah. So we need to think about the controls from the legal to the ethical, moral level.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's very preachy because there isn't much else we can do and say. I think there's a lot of things we can do, and I think just being here also, I learned a lot of things by Mr. Anuruddha were talking about, the different types of experiences and how to work on it. But, at the end of the day, sometimes, when the clients ask for something, we are sometimes very hard to say no. You can tell them, okay, don't go to Pinnavala, don't do certain activities about the Perahara, but at the end of the day, the client will do it. So, we can always say, okay, we'll drop you there, but, that's still happening. So I think that's very important, and, just bringing it back, I think even there's a lot that we can do in terms of promotion and storytelling in Sri Lanka. So I think, I know there are certain people that have a few different comments, especially on the elephant transit home in Udawalawe. But I feel like, at least on an ethical point of view, the job that they're trying to do and what they're doing of taking in orphan calf elephants and putting them back to the wild is really admirable. But then again, once you go there, you can read about it, you can hear about it, but there's a lot more storytelling that you can give around it. So we recently just sponsored an orphan calf called Ami, and that's actually when we actually got to understand, how the whole process works, how they go find these elephants and the care they're giving them. Yes, I'm sure there are maybe improvements and different things that can be done at the center, but I think a lot of things that's missing is sometimes the storytelling aspect of it. We are not telling that story. We don't have social media, and I spoke to one of the vets there, and unfortunately, there just isn't a way of telling that story, why this is happening, adding more to that experience so that everyone wants to come there, because the comparison to maybe Pinnavala and all of that is, or other elephant centers, is you can't touch an elephant, you can't take a photo, you can't take a selfie, you can't rub them and do all these things. But at the end of the day, that's a great project that's trying to keep these calf elephants wild. And this project actually, most of the calves that used to those days go to Pinnavala would now come here and have a chance to go back to the wild again. So there are things that we can do to actually help promote and tell these good stories also.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I would like to turn to Mr. Nalaka. What is your take on the way forward for Sri Lanka tourism?
I think both these gentlemen covered it all. From a statistical point of view, just to sort of give you, I think, for the betterment of our students, from a country point of view, accommodation, if you look at it, you have the formal sector and the informal sector. The formal sector is basically the hotels which have been registered with the tourist board, where there's some sort of a audit or a control, right? So for us to ensure that there's some sort of control without having informal growth, where informal growth, in my opinion, has to happen, but that's the place where all these things get out of hand. Because if I start up a smaller hotel tomorrow, I wouldn't really be worried about how sustainable I am. I'll be worried about how do I make money to pay a loan or to make something, because that's my priority. So if you look at out of the total number of rooms, I don't have the actual statistics as at now, I think about 52,000 rooms are there, which is 1-star to villas to bungalows to 5-star level, right? So that's that. But at the same time, statistics also say that that's about 43 or 44% of the total room inventory in Sri Lanka. So that means an equal or bigger number of rooms are there in the informal sector. So when you look at the problem at hand, this problem is bigger than what we think. So that's something which I think we have to, as a country, look at how we have a mechanism to find out. Of course, now is easy to find out, because if you go to booking.com or maybe any other Airbnb or whatever, gone are the days that these people sell by word of mouth. Now everyone is on a digital channel. So there are ways of finding out who's selling and whether it is registered or not. So we might have to have some sort of a mechanism in place where we sort of look at it and take certain actions. maybe those actions might not be the best actions at this point of time when everyone is fighting for to be in power and all that. So these are decisions. I think Maxine nailed it there. There is a way to be done, but only thing is these are very bitter decisions to be made by whoever the decision maker. So they will play it to mostly the gallery, right? So we need to take a firm stance if we are really serious about it, and the time is right now for us to be serious because there's, you know, the global warming is happening. We are doing this for a purpose, right? So the world will not wait no until our policies are okay and everyone is happy for it to sort of. The world is moving at a pace where we need to take the decisions now. So that has to be educated. I suppose education, policy, control, all these three has to work hand in hand. Young adults like you have to feel for the country when you step out of the campus. If the campus has done that, I think you all are trying your best by having these panel discussions and all that. I think that is the best education I suppose you all can give for them. They need to feel for the country. They need to feel that this is my motherland. And we are a country that we don't sell a concrete jungle. I suppose only concrete jungle is Cinnamon Life at this point of time in Colombo, but apart from Cinnamon Life being an integrated property, rest of it is, I would say, all natural. We sell a natural product. If you look at Dubai, Dubai is all man-made. So even if a thing breaks, it's a matter of making it. Yeah. But here, the coral reefs to certain places so pristine, if you go and mess it up, it's gone forever. Of course, it'll regenerate, but it'll take hundreds and millions of years. Yeah. So we have to be very careful. So you all have to be the leaders. You all have to understand that, end of the day, we will be in business maybe for the next 10, 15 years, and then you all will be mostly taking up positions where, like what Anuruddha said, when you give an experience, you need to feel, if I give this experience, am I doing the right thing? Because you know, you will make $100 out of it. But is it worth it? Because you will sort of damage to $1,000 worth of a damage because you want to make $100 profit. You have to feel it. You have to feel really hurt. I shouldn't be doing it. If that feeling is there, because you can't stop it only by controls. People will find ways of doing it because money comes first in this world. Ultimately, unless otherwise we are living in a dreamland where we feel money is not worthy, everyone will feel money comes first. So you need to be, if you are feeling guilty, at least we have won the battle halfway through. And I feel that you also should ensure that you have a very ethical way of working where you don't swing by your ethics just because your employer or someone wants. You need to stand by your ethics and say, sorry, if you are not willing to do this, I don't think this is a company for me. I would rather go. And I'm sure more companies will appreciate people like that rather than, people doing what they've been told to do, right? So I mean, these are things which we have to evolve. Sometimes maybe what I'm saying now might be like really a dream to come true. It doesn't work, but everyone starts thinking like that. That will be the change. That will be the change that we have to. So I would expect, or I would want you all to feel that one day you will have your children, right? And they will have to have a country, and the country has to survive for the next maybe few generations to come. So what you do now, if you are going to, sabotage and break down every little thing, or rather destroy it for the next generations to come, and if you don't feel anything bad about it, that means there's something wrong somewhere. If you're feeling guilty, and if whatever that we are saying, if you all have listened to it at least a little bit, and if it makes a little bit of sense, I hope you all understand the gravity of it. Take it to heart. So that is what I would say the country also as a whole should do. Like we start at the smallest place, which is the institution, which is university. University trying to teach you all the right or the wrong thing. Then all the universities, all the institutions doing it. Take it up to the school level, right? Now at the school, I'm also little involved with one school, but little involved. And basically, I would say in grade 2, grade 3, They need to be taught how to save water, right? And measure it. If you wash your hands and if you keep the tap open until you put soap, you keep a cup and measure it, amount of water that is being wasted. When you have a bath, I'm of course also to be blamed, I also do that. So what I'm saying is I'm no saint, right? So all have to change. You keep the shower on until you put your shampoo and all that and do it. You keep a bucket and measure. Do a video. Do a video, right? In the bathroom, of course, you can have some gent, yeah, I know, can have a swimming trunk or whatever, so otherwise, grade 2 children will start running. So, just jokes apart, I know after lunch also, no, all sleepy. So, what I'm trying to say is, you show the amount of water that is being wasted. Because simple minds, smaller minds, at that age, when you're at when you're like 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, it should go to their head saying that, oh my God, I'm wasting water. Show, other countries when there's no water, the suffering that they go through. Right? I think our education system also has to change. Because when you all come here, you all are almost adults, right? When they hit 17, 18, you all are adults. So, but I think that's a little too late. This has to come from primary education, maybe nurseries, play schools, all that have to change. So it's a change that we need to really look at. So I think the government has to play a bigger role. Not only the government, we can't leave it to the government. Institutions have to play a bigger role. Companies have to play a bigger role. You all have to play a bigger role. I think end of the day, it boils down to you, individuals. Individuals have to play a bigger role. I think if we do that, I suppose that's the only way I feel that we can really make a change. Because otherwise, no one, you won't study, right? You won't. But when you feel like studying, you'll study, I think everything applies, the same logic applies to pretty much everything. So I suppose no right or wrong answer, but I believe we have to be the change that we have to see.
Of course. So thank you, and that's interesting that you drew our attention to the idea of thinking sustainability and making our part of our life. It's no more choice now. So with that, we'll move on to the our neighbor again to finish with before Q&A. So I have seen you as a highly committed eco entrepreneur. I have seen you here around when I was studying here as well. So you are still in the same line. So from your perspective, how do you want Sri Lanka tourism to be in the future?
Personally, my opinion, I want Sri Lanka to have lesser number of high-yield tourists. Lesser number who would pay a higher, who would have higher spending capacity. So as a country, we need to decide whether we want to be Thailand or Bhutan. Those are the two closest examples that we can give. Bhutan charges $200-250 per person just to enter the country, other than the visa fees and everything, just the tourist levy. Whereas Thailand would give visa-free entry to almost all the countries around the world, and they would welcome everybody, and that's their strategy. The size of the two countries would define something, and at the same time, it's not difficult to understand where we belong also. With 22 million, close to 22 million now, so with, residents, and then 4 million tourists, a country like us, whether we could be really sustain the business. I'm not talking about the environment, I'm not talking about the capacity of the national parks, I'm not talking about anything else. Whether we could sustain the business without cutthroat business, or cutthroat mechanism that you need to get adapted, because suddenly government says or somebody says, okay, get into tourism, and you take loans, you do everything under the sun to get into the industry, and then suddenly no tourists, so you have no other option rather than undercutting the neighbor. So whether you are a DMC or a hotelier or whoever, it will happen. It's simple supply and demand theory. So our question is whether we want to be in that, or whether we want to be strategic and go for high yield, low number, where the communities can sustain, our cultural aspects could be kind of, you can't safeguard as such, but at least you can avoid sensitive areas. You can avoid sensitive kind of, cultural, you can avoid intruding certain areas. So likewise, we can do certain, we can be precautionary, we can take precautionary decisions or steps to avoid most of the problems if we go with low number. But it is not the popular want that the people would want. The communities, the people in the industry and who are out, who would aspire to be in the industry, everybody would want bigger number. But going with what Narek said, he said, be the change you seek. Of course, great Mahatma Gandhi said that, but he mentioned it. So what he mentioned was that you don't have to wait till the world changes around you. Be the change what you want to be. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to decide whether you need to build, say, if it is a hotel, whether you can decide whether to build a 25-room hotel or 15-room hotel or a 5-room hotel. But if you do it right, if you create the right experiences around, if you bring the right aesthetic aspects or right environmental aspects, you can probably charge more per room for that 5-room hotel than what you could charge with that 15 or 20-room hotel. And if you want to become a professional, again, the same theory applies. If you want to get paid from an employment, you could be a jack of all trade and get paid just average, or you could be a professional or specialist in some aspect of tourism and get paid higher because everybody would want to hire you because you are a specialist. So it's the same theory whether we would want to apply as a nation or as a business or as a professional. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have like 10 minutes left. We'll take 5 minutes out of that for a quick Q&A session. We can take 1 or 2 questions. You can raise your hand or shout out. There are mics available.
Thank you very much, Hiran and the TIP team for taking this timely, important topic. So I have a small, for my understanding, I have 2 questions. First question is to understand the current context in the in the industry. To what level that you have integrated sustainability into your core business? That is my question number 1. Because as you said, very correctly mentioned, unless it's become a business case, unless it's making profit for you, it will not sustain even the sustainable initiatives. So that is my first question. And the second question is, as we all know now, the tourism industry is a highly fragile, highly vulnerable sector. So with this global warming and the climate change, so you feel the impacts in first hand. So therefore, adaptation, talking about adaptation would be a key part in your discussion tables. So I would like to know whether you have taken that discussion into your, into the top tables in the industry. Those are 2 questions. Thank you.
Do you want everyone to comment on that, or?
Yeah, so I think just in terms of integration, I think There's a few ways. I think, it's something that we've always thought about even before sustainability was, a true word. And I think, I think one thing that we did as a company is we got an accreditation through Travel Life, which is probably one of the most well-known sustainability accreditation places. And actually, might think sometimes that, accreditations are just a part of greenwashing, but we thought is it actually opens our minds to sometimes look at different aspects, because it is extremely holistic sometimes that you're not just looking at reducing your wastage. You're also thinking about your head office in energy consumptions. You're also thinking about obviously your employees, which we always consider, but even things which really go into the details of the type of suppliers, hotels, and for us to also evaluate the different suppliers that we work with in a more constructive way, not just us to just with our little knowledge that we have, just to say, okay, this is sustainable, this is not, but we have to do a lot of work behind it to understand really if that is that. So I think that is one way that I think a lot of companies also are looking to do that. And I think it definitely, when we did it, it was definitely an eye-opener into all the different aspects. I might be missing out quite a few, but no, actually even, stuff like your gender balance within your employment and things like that. So it's very important because it's such a broad scale, and especially when you look at it, there's lots of different integrations. But I think what also I want to say is that it's very much a journey, and yes, sometimes the profitability isn't there. It's not the biggest driver between when we make a decision on sustainability. It's more the good you can do with it, and that to leverage, I would say that profitability, it's something that we also, I think, struggled with that at the start, is that you actually have to market and talk about and push these things. It might sound like greenwashing, but it is quite important nowadays to, do that. And I think that's what, we are trying to do a little more, and also that hopefully will help get other people also to, understand and, get on the bandwagon as well. So I think on integrations, I hope that answers that. I'll maybe leave the rest to.
Just to, I think Travel Life is also one of the good certifications to have, because when you get a certification, you have to work for it. So at least that opens up so many things where we can do better, what we are not doing. Over and above that, I think I'll just move a little to the group, because we are also a set of companies, conglomerate. So from a group point of view, sustainability is one of the core factors that the board looks at. Every month we have to report our emissions. Every month hotels have to talk about their entire, whatever the parameters set, and looked at it in a way that if certain parameters are red, the general manager will himself have to come and explain. So we have had issues where we have completely shut down certain areas of the hotel because of water leaks and such, because we don't want to operate because there's so much of water going out. So quite a bit of I would say, quite a bit of effort being put by the top. So then the bottom has to report. Then secondly, the Plasticycle project, which we started, if you know the Southern Highway, we sponsored the plastic collection bins. And that was also a project by the group with BERA and Road Development Authority to collect plastic and sort of do it. Now that concept is getting sort of viral, which is a good thing. Then also as a group, we have a ESG policy. That is environmental, social and governance sort of a policy, which every company has to have a plan. Even Walkers Tours and us, we have a plan. And our plans could, of course, vary. But our plans say that by 2035, we want to go all electric. But having said that, at the moment, we can't bring a single vehicle in. So, but having a plan and adjusting the plan is good, better than not having a plan. So we also have very stringent, and also talking about gender balance. We've been one of the companies, John Keys, that we wanted to completely take off this glass ceiling concept, or the glass ceiling, what we have, especially for the female workforce, right? So we have 100 days paternity leave. So normally, as per the country law is 84 days maternity leave when you have a baby. When a lady has a baby, it's 80 to 84 days. But in our case, 100 days for the lady. Now we have 100 days for the father also. So when you recruit, you don't have that biasness that you tend to recruit more males because they don't get pregnant, right? So here it's the same case. If you get pregnant or wife gets pregnant, either way you'll have to go. I mean, of course, males won't get pregnant, right? So, but jokes apart, it completely goes beyond that that social norm of you tending like an unconscious bias of having recruiting a male versus a female. And every business they look at, every quarter we have to report your gender balance at a level where senior management, middle management and lower. And we have a policy that by 2025 we want to be at almost a 30% group wide, and by 2030, correct me if I'm wrong, Shara, is about 50% group wide. So and we do have about 10,000 to I think about 14,000 employees, so it's not easy. So that's basically the commitment. So accessible tourism is also one thing that we started off as an off-spin of making a little bit of a niche product, and that is making its rounds because we invested quite a bit on the equipment. We have vehicles which have the ramps, which we have the hydraulic lifts. We have people trained. More than the equipment is the training, because equipment anyone can sort of buy from China or someplace, but understanding the real need of accessible tourists. What would they want? How do they want to be treated? So, I mean, that itself talks about the inclusivity. And from a group point of view, I think you can go to our website, www.keels.com. There's a whole heap of things on sustainability. I think there's so many things done, not only through Walkers Tours as a whole, but through we do have a division who looks at sustainability. I think that's mainly because of the fact that as a group, our contribution towards the good as well as the harmful stuff is inevitable. When you do ginger beer to ice creams, Elephant House ice creams to Elephant House soft drinks to Keel's sausages to you name it. I mean, these are products where production, when you do, there's a whole heap of stuff that goes the other way when it comes to low impact, right? So we need to do a lot of things to ensure that as a group we offset that. And that is, I suppose, taking the responsibility on us. So, but I would request and invite everyone to just Google keels.com, and there's a whole heap of information that on sustainability that we do. So I suppose every company, of course here we are more of a bigger chunk because we have our reporting lines and all that, so we are compelled to do a lot of things. But I'm sure, I know for a fact that Maxim and FEMA has done a lot of things, sometimes even going beyond what bigger companies like Cinnamon has done. I know that for a fact. And all of us, even Anuruddha, of course, he's eating, drinking sustainability. So he's like a walking sustainable person. So I think we are all very much committed. But what we need to do now is I think our time is now up. We are convinced. So I don't think we need to be more convinced. It's like, we are pretty much convinced, and what we need to do is we need y'all to be convinced that this is the way to go. So I think that would be my thoughts.
Yeah, I think the question was well answered. So since we are running out of time, we can take one more question. I think someone is having a mic in hand.
Yes, Hiran is having a mic from the controlling room. So we got a question from Suranga. He's asking, do you think the government has done enough to promote tourism and invested in the correct areas, given the private sector proper acceptance for driving tourism for so many years? Keeping in mind the foul practices when it comes to the procuring train tickets, wildlife malpractices which are negatively impacting promoting the country.
Okay, you can go.
Take it with me. So ask him which government now. Basically, governments have changed. No. Long story short, I think maybe others also will chip in. I believe, in my opinion, we need to have a proper mechanism for. It's not only for the tourism attractions. Every little thing, starting from top to bottom, we need to have a mechanism of capacity planning. I think we touched it with the jeeps. Jeeps one, train is another. Then even transport as a whole, right? We pay 3 times more the train ticket price to get it from the black market. So why should we do that? If we are talking tourism so big, we should have a, and these are things which digital channels can help can transform it completely. You go to any other country, you don't go and play a black market guy saying that, can you give me a ticket for 3 times the price? That is, when the tickets are sold out in the digital channel, if you are going late, you might buy off someone who has a channel. That's a different story. So maybe when we have the digital channels, that will evolve. So something will come. But digital can change this thing, but I believe that, I don't know why it was not done, but I don't think that we have reached that. I think maybe others also can chip in. Sorry.
Yeah, my opinion is, of course, yeah, of course, I agree to what Nalaga said, but at the same time, we have been going through this whole cycle where we are waiting, thinking that one government to do better than the other, and we are waiting, this and this would happen. Good things have happened, but we can't always expect everything to be fallen in our laps. You also need to be a change agent and do things, the way that you want. One of the examples is that, okay, so one of the questions was about economics. To be sustainable, does it cost money? They answered, yes, it could cost. I would say yes and no. I'll give you a yes answer because now say we have a problem with finding trained naturalists, trained wildlife guides. It's a big problem. So what do? We can keep blaming the government, saying that, okay, your universities aren't producing enough wildlife graduates. We can keep blaming, or we can start making the change. So what we did was, with the Jawaharlal University, we started a diploma where we, on our own, we spent training wildlife guides and qualifying them. So they were not only for us, it was for the industry. Of course, they can join us, but it is not only for us. So then we wanted more, but we had a problem. There was a bit of a bottleneck there. So we started our own in-house academy. It was just launched like a few weeks back. The second batch we launched on our own, only for our guys. So we want to be sustainable and have our own training mechanisms, all that, but it is costing. So it is, we are paying taxes. So theoretically you can say, no, the universities need to be giving us what we want, but it won't happen. So then we need to be basically producing our own qualified staff. At the same time, so if you do it properly, you can save money also being sustainable. You think using these kind of bottles would costlier than plastic bottles? No. There is an investment, but after that, if you do the refilling hygienically, you would save a heap of money. And solar, and doing your washing in a sustainable manner, having correct policies, having correct checklists, all that will save you a lot of money also. So it is not just that, sustainable is costly, it will save you money as well.
Okay, thank you. Any thought on that? Or?
No, I think there's also a point on the promotions. I think it's something that's a little sad that, the country hasn't had a global promotion in X number of years. And I think just as Nalak was joking, which government, I think that's a bit of the problem we have. It's always the government will come and change it. And actually by the time they action it, they might be out. So then we are back to square one. So then if they want to change it up again and change up and get the ideas, take another 1-2 years, tender process, and then that government might be out as well. So I think, we just need a little bit of continuity, and in terms of sustainability also, I do agree. I think, the long-term impact is you can make a lot of savings from it, but I think it's just sometimes that mindset shift, because for example, when we started introducing the glass bottles, actually plastic bottle revenue at our hotels was quite high before we did. But now what we do is we give the water free at breakfast, lunch and all of that, because we do it hygienically, but since it's not a sealed bottle, we feel like it's something obviously we can't get guests to pay for. But at the end of the day, you sometimes lose that impact, but then you gain in other places, like in the hotel rooms anyways, you're giving a free plastic bottle, now you're giving a free refill bottle. So, it has those good and bad, but I think sometimes, you just have to take that leap and, just go forward, I think. You just have to take that leap and go forward. But overall, I think the impacts are positive, and it's always. I think finances matter, but sometimes you have to take that burden, and over the long run, that really helps and will help your business. And when people are starting to think more and more sustainably, it will also help people come towards your business, which is very important. Yeah.
Thank you. So, time is already passed. Before we finish, I would like to give less than a minute for a final thought for our senior member.
This is actually for all you young graduates who are going to pass out as people aspiring to be engaged with the tourism industry in some way. You've heard a cross-section of pluses and minuses, and don't get fooled. This is going to remain in some way for some time. So don't expect things to be rosy out there unless, to take a cue from what one of the gentlemen said, you have to be the change yourself. You have to spearhead that change. You have to say, no, I am going to do what is right. So the generation, the future generation is the one that will spearhead this industry going forward. So if you take that step, and if you make sure that you commit yourself to that step, there can be change seen in the future. Maybe not in the next 5 years, but beyond that. So determine yourself to take that step. Thank you.
Thank you. We have come to the end of this session, and I would like to believe that this has been an educational, inspirational, and eye-opening session. And I believe that all the experts are positive that Sri Lanka is having great potential for a revolutionary change in tourism industry. And we made several points of course, as conclusions. We emphasized the need for Sri Lankan experience, and importantly, the balance between Western and Eastern mindsets, and finally, be the change that you want to see. So with that, we'll hope for a revolutionary change in Sri Lanka tourism landscape that can positively contribute to the national development. So, thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much.
I kindly ask you to remain on the stage as we move on to the next segment.